Hello and welcome everyone. I'm glad that you were able to take some time out to attend this live event. I would like to welcome all of our new attendees from around the world and welcome back all of our previous listeners as well. Time to grab your lunch, coffee, or popcorn, and let's get this going. Quick introduction. My name is Anuj Sehgal, and I'm the VP of Sales for Strategic Accounts at BayOne Solutions. A big thank you to BayOne for hosting this special Future of Work series. BayOne helps large companies compete like a startup. Since its inception, BayOne has been helping companies with their transformation journey, whether moving to the future of work by providing qualified experts on demand, training their legacy workforce on future technologies, or automating their business processes. BayOne has been doing it all. BayOne has been focusing a lot on our community, and we've been giving back ever since the pandemic has started. We've been hosting these insightful webinars for over a year now, and happy to welcome you back. We are hosting a series of future of work events because the technology landscape is changing fairly quickly, and the job responsibilities in organizations are changing even faster. Today's session is on future of full stack development. I also want to give a big shout out to all of our valuable customers, employees, and consultants that are making a difference out there. And also a hello to all of our future customers listening in. So why full stack development? Well, we've received a ton of feedback and questions on full stack development. Keeping that in mind, we wanted to invite an elite panel to talk about how to get into this topic and the evolution and the future of full stack development, and how you can get involved with the same and maybe answer some of your questions along the way. So without further delay, let me introduce you to my close friends and the panel for today. Ashok Banerjee is a VP of Engineering for VMware Platform Services. Ashok has previously been the CTO for Enterprise Security at Symantec and has previously held technical leadership roles across Google, Twitter, Flipkart, and BEA systems. He has led products across a wide range of domains: e-commerce, cybersecurity, payments, logistics, data warehouse engines, marketing, supply chain, and experimentation platforms. He's undertaken large transformations from cloud, DevOps, containers, NLP, AI, machine learning, and big data. These changes were accomplished in widely varying contexts, from pre-IPO companies to Fortune 500 companies, from VC-backed to PE-led companies. So a lot of experience here. Syed Hassan is currently working at Hims & Hers Health as a VP of Engineering. Previously, he's led search and customer experience teams at different e-commerce organizations, including Walmart Labs, Macy's, and Williams-Sonoma. He focuses on lean development, digital transformation, and team scaling. He is an MS in computer science, lives in San Francisco Bay Area, and is an awesome guy. And lastly, but not the least, Ashit Joshi, very close friend of mine, is the CEO and founder of Newcash Corporation. Newcash is a student-focused financial super app for the Indian market. Prior to that, Ashit has led multiple leadership roles in the Valley. He was the founding member and VP of Engineering at Chegg, which is a student-first education firm, managing a team of more than 100 developers globally. Ashit has had a short stint at Rocket Lawyer as its CTO and CPO as well. And after that, he actually ended up at Altruist as a founding CTO. So Ashit is super passionate about students and fintech and basically their needs in education. So he's super passionate. He brings that passion for his students, and along with the experience in fintech, he's basically started Newcash. So I hope you're all as excited as I am to get this going. Let me hand this off to Ashok for a keynote, and let's get this session started.
Thank you, Anuj. I think Rachel will project the slides and we'll start going over. Look, really excited. Thank you, Anuj, for having me as the keynote speaker. I wanted to talk a little about the future of full stack development. Very interesting topic. Let's move to the first slide on tiers and stacks, maybe the easiest way, what it is, and then we can infer what it may become. So when we think of what it is, we talk about the browsers and the front end, browsers, mobile, the front end, the business logic, which has all the logic to project what the conditional logic for the front end, the touch points with the back end. But what is often overlooked is that there's also a touch point with increasingly more machine learning engines. I believe that the future will start to see an intersection with a lot more ML, a lot more of the iterations from training and inference, more the inference engines getting tied in. Anomaly detection, time series, neural nets, deep learning, clustering, all the things that we hear about in regular ML will start to get integrated more, increasingly more with the business logic and the full stack. Why full stack? There's always a value to specialization, and yet there's also value to the generalization. What happens with generalization? We think of speed of development, where very little is lost in translation. If we go back to the previous slide, we would think of, say, the browser, the front end experience changing, needs some back end changes, and it's different people. Someone wants to do it one way, there's a meeting, everything happens, but it's not quite done the way we were hoping it would be. And there's a loop. And this loop, one person's on vacation, this loop gets longer. One person's booked up, the Scrum teams don't match up, it gets longer. So the difference in languages almost acts as a barrier from one silo to another. There's a value in specialization. Let's move to the next slide. Yeah. There's a value in specialization where we get ultra high scale, ultra low latency, ultra high availability, enormous databases and very large volumes, which is all fantastic. And sometimes you need specialization and a PhD in that topic, which is much, much further along in the arc of a company. In the earliest stages, you need speed of development, time to market, less is lost in translation, ultra rapid, tight loop of innovation with very little lost in translation. Pre-scale up, market fit stages, experimentation stages. Another thing which happens when you're changing language stacks, you're serializing, deserializing, doing type conversions, instantiating virtual machines of very different types. It's a lot of back and forth and harder to share logic, code, data structures from the front end to the back end to the database. Why are we seeing a trend where full stack is growing? This is my interpretation, of course. I think the key trend is the power of many machines. It has made available today the power of many machines. You don't have to wait for procurement. You don't have to wait for a long approval cycle. You can do cloud, many machines, Kubernetes allowing very large scale orchestration, distributed hash maps. You can do everything in memory. When you can do everything in memory, ultra low latency is just a dollar amount away, because you can put the entire data structure, entire data in memory, rather than impossible. So cloud, serverless, some of these trends takes care of some of the specialization, making the power of generalization and speed even more important. Let's move forward. Easiest to describe this in the art, when we think of projecting to the future, even before COVID, let's look at what have been the major startups. We look at search in the 2000, Google. By 2010, it was about relationships, friendships, Facebook, Twitter, sharing of feelings and thoughts. By 2014, 2012, Dropbox, Box, DocuSign, big startups, big trends. More digital contracts. 2015, you're starting to see digital contracts for physical world. Uber, Lyft, Netflix. Increasingly, we're going into cyber physical. Increasingly, we're going into IoT, edge, autonomous. So let's move forward to the next slide. This is one nugget we'll take forward in what I think where the market will go. When we look at increasingly digital, it's pretty much every company, from movies to legal to exercise we are seeing an exponential growth, more and more people coming in. And this is from State of the Internet and Statista. Move forward. The key trend here, from dating and Tinder to elections, everything's happening with a lot more digital. The data volume is quadrupling every 4 years, but the human expectation of speed is not quadrupling. It's not like 4 years later you'll be fine with a 2-second response time. Our expectation continues to be half a second. Much below half a second, most of us don't notice. Above half a second, just starts to feel a little slow. So where are we going with this? The volumes of data will be increasingly more serverless. The nuances in machine learning and hyper specialization, personalization will come more into the fingertips, and full stack development will start to get only fuller. The right-hand side of the slide, how important has it been? This is interesting. In 2016, Donald Trump had 5.9 million variations of the ads targeting voters. Hillary Clinton had 66,000 ad variations. That's a massive difference in inventory. So big data, I'm not saying that's the only reason, but generally big data matters. Big data matters. Digital campaigns matter. And we will see more deeply disambiguated, more deeply personalized systems with a lot more ML. Let's move forward. In terms of my final predictions, trying to stay within the time that we wanted to, I think speed will go only faster and fuller stack. The full stack will embrace Kubernetes even more. We will have more cybersecurity, cyber attacks, simply because everything moves to digital. So full stack will start to embrace more security components with it, especially remote attack vectors. Full stack will include a lot more ML and big data within its fold, and as I was saying, get fuller, and the trend will continue is my expectation. It already has a lot of monitoring. As more things come out with full stack, the monitoring stack will become a bit more prescriptive in the full stack, more tightly woven in. And I expect a lot more IoT and cyber physical. The cyber physical world, so if you look at IPv6 today, the driving force is not consumer IoT, it's industrial IoT. Massive number of systems, remotely controllable, remotely addressable, leads to more cyber attacks, as well as way more power in the system. The trends here, I expect, will be significantly more autonomous system with LID as a part of it, as a corollary part of it. LID being low internet, intermittent internet, and prolonged disconnected. Increasingly, as the cloud becomes the brain, we have to start to consider what happens to systems when they're disconnected from their brain. Full stack has been a trend on a tearaway, and I expect it very much to continue. The cloud and serverless computing makes a lot of scaling primitives available at our fingertips. I expect the cloud trends to be the fuel behind it, and full stack to continue to expand and become even fuller. With that, thank you very much. Very much enjoyed the conversation. Back to you, Anuj.
Thank you so much, Ashok. This is super fascinating. Really appreciate you sharing your thoughts. Let's get the panel here, and let's get through some of the questions that we've actually curated from our audiences in the past. So let's sort of scale back and help our audiences sort of understand what is the definition of full stack. Are there multiple definitions? How, Everybody talks about full stack these days, like we used to talk about big data a few years back. So yeah, let's start off there. Sayed, would you like to start off with this question first?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the opportunity. Well, so as we're building applications, full stack can mean many things, right? As you mentioned, and I think in my use case, you can treat full stack engineers as the Swiss Army knife, right? They can basically do a multi-tasking activities. The key over there is the interest from the developer to really wanting to know what's happening on the other side of things, wanting to know hows instead of just taking the data, for example, in a front end engineering example, and then just implementing the data. Instead, they have to have the curiosity to really know exactly how that data is getting to them. So that's basically how I look at it.
Yep. Thank you so much, Sayed. I completely agree, and it's all about passion. That's basically what drives. Engineering is all about that anyway. Um, Next one that I have is, why did it change to full stack? Or there's been an evolution from like a backend or UI standpoint. What are the problems that the companies are trying to solve, right? Ashid, do you want to take this?
Absolutely, and thanks for sending this question across to me, Anuj. I myself started my career as a full stack developer, my first job, and the way I look at the full stack evolution happened was, if you look at like the 1990s and to 2000, right? You didn't see a flood of startups, internet startups in the market. So back then it was all specialization, desktop apps or the web apps. You'll see backend J2E developers, or like people who are writing like JSP pages, right? But if you look at since 2000, so many startups have evolved, and the demand and the hunger for the developers started like increasing. So there was a rapid need and the type of skills that they needed. Now, if they try to create like higher full like specialization, execution was of prime importance. And if you try to go for execution and speed, you can't do a higher specialization. So I think you saw on Ashok's slides, it's about time to market, and startups cannot afford specialization in the area. So I think that drove the need for full stack development in the industry. I would say it's like starting 2000 when all the internet startups came up.
Absolutely, completely agree with that. Thanks so much for that, Ashid. Ashok, would you like to add anything here?
Happy to. Ashit, excellent points. I think it's empowerment and of the developer. Most of the times, by the way, I worked a lot on J2E, Ashit, and I've worked on WebLogic before that, Oracle. So it's a fantastic system where it scaled and everything, but it did not enable the front end and the back end developers to be on the same thing, same stack. So it always felt like a boundary the front end person has hit. Now you're waiting for Ashit to say, I'm the front end. I'm waiting for Ashit to pick up in the back end. And this handoff was never smooth. Someone's on vacation, someone cannot diagnose and debug, they're busy with something else. You never had one place to go. And that was the core of the issue. There was a lot of bouncing around of the issue. Another corollary issue, which I've seen firsthand, when there's an issue, find the customer reports an issue they see on the front end. When there are 10 backend teams and everyone wants to bounce it across to someone else, it's really hard for a leader. It's like, I have 10 Scrum teams. Everyone proves that it's not their problem, but it's still my customer's problem. Full stack and similarity in the language stack actually helps. Homogeneous language actually helps a person look through the whole thing instead of, oh, I finished looking at the Java part, we're okay. Customer still has the problem. Someone else has to look at the Go part and the Node part. I think it really makes a difference on being customer centric, customer focused, and moving things forward. So completely agree.
Thank you, Ashok. Sayed, any of your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with both of the colleagues. Another point is I think I focus a lot on lean development. So nowadays you have smaller size teams. You don't have the luxury to have separate large teams focused on separate areas. especially when your shop is set up around experimentation, A/B testing. You have to build these tenant experiences, a lot of variations. It's easier for a full stack engineer to really whip them up without really a lot of communication. Once they have the hypothesis, they can really focus on execution. And in that scenario, you don't need a lot of scaling. What you need is sample size traffic, so you don't really worry about a lot of scaling situations where you would need some help. And it's all about making the needle move and really get a direction right. So full stack engineers really work well in that kind of scenario. They handle all the implementation of analytics as well as the front end logic, back end logic. So it's a lot easier for anybody to analyze the results quickly and really do a rapid development there.
I'll add one more thing, actually.
Yes, sir.
So what I've noticed is someone full stack usually understands the business more completely. Because if you're doing your silo, you've got your Lego piece really good, but you've got your tree really good. You haven't got the forest. You've forgotten the forest for the individual tree that you're building and working on. The full stack developer, you can often throw a slightly more ambiguous. They got the big picture problem, they'll come back because they get a bit more of the business context. But Syed, when you were talking, it triggered from some of the stuff you were saying. Back to you, Anuj.
Thank you, Ashok. Yeah, and thank you, gentlemen. I think those are really, really important points, and that's basically the root cause of what organizations are looking to solve, right? But that sort of brings us to the next question. And all of you guys are leaders in your respective careers and organizations. You and your teams are hiring constantly. Let's flip the script over and sort of understand, what are managers and teams expecting from either junior, mid-level, or senior developers? What do you want them to bring to the table when you're basically focusing on hiring or scaling up your team with a full stack focus? We could start off. Ashad, do you want to start off first?
Yeah, my perspective on that is, I think it depends on the size and the state of the company you are at. I think, as we said in the beginning, if you're an early stage startup who's still trying to get the product out of the door, then you go for full stack developers. You want everyone to do everything. But as you hit the scale, if you are increasing the volume of data, quadrupling every 4 years, you can't say I'm going to use React for a backend services and it's going to scale, because eventually the cost to run these services on a hardware is going to be outweigh the benefit you get from having full stack developers, and you might have to go into specialization. So I believe it's I think it's a judgment call that the leader needs to make, understanding what's the size of the company, what my current needs are. I wouldn't recommend, I think they also say similar things about microservices concept, because that took off so much in last 5 years that everyone's like, oh, we are building microservices. But on the other side, if you look at the more microservices you build, the more complexity it adds. Same way, the more languages and technologies you add to your stack, the more single points of failures it creates, and it slows the whole things down. So I would say it's a leadership a judgment call, but from a leadership, and they need to be able to make the choices to say whether I want a senior, junior, full stack, or specialization within my team. Sometimes you might have a hybrid as well, which is what has also worked out well as per my experience.
Thank you for that, Ashad. Really appreciate it. Syed, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, in typical startups, your mid-level engineers are really useful because the expectation from them is sort of independent work ethics, control on feature delivery. So if you identify the feature, they can go and execute on it at their level with a fairly independent sort of way. For junior engineers, of course, I would love to hire those. I've in the past always hired those only because that's how you find a really I want to say the mindset that really excels. They have that hunger, the edge to really put that extra effort to really get to the next level. So if we pair them up with senior engineers, it makes a lot of sense. A lot of times you pair them up with engineers with back-end experience and they have some front-end experience, they tend to pick up more of the cross-functional traits and become better much faster versus like back-end engineer or front-end engineer, which are way more experienced, are little hesitant to really cross the line and spend some time on the other technologies when they're not used to and comfortable. So in terms of grooming full stack engineers, junior to mid-level engineers are really good because they tend to really experiment and try things more.
Thank you, Sid. Ashok?
Happy to. I think the number one thing I look for is the first derivative of a person. Actually, one of two things. So first, where do they stand today? And the other part, how fast do they learn? So I have this odd way to interview candidates where I will ask them, what do they know, what they don't know. So I do want to talk to them on what they know, but I will pick something that they don't know and tell them, I would love to talk to you about it in 2 weeks. What I'm looking for is, do they actually bother to learn? Typically, by the way, full stack engineers, I think they write blogs, newsletters. There's an air and aura of unstoppability where they will do what is needed, as opposed to saying, I do X, X didn't work, I'm done. That's, you're good at X, that's it. But that is not the ideal state. So people who will open up the books, look at, try a few things, and go through, break those boundaries, become a lot more helpful than people. You told me to try this, it doesn't work, and now it's my headache to figure out. So unstoppability, research, the ones who tend to understand more full stack tend to get frustrated less because they understand why we are changing tact. Otherwise, it just sounds like we're being unreasonable, why we change from plan A to plan B. So that interest in the domain, as opposed to just the interest in doing a very specialized thing, actually helps retain, leads to a better environment. They get it. Okay, we tried that didn't work. I get it why I'm doing option B. Typically, in terms of mix, I will do 2 to 3 engineers for one senior engineer, 2 to 3 of these for a principal engineer. That gives the technical view and oversight and help that they need. So
Awesome.
Just like to add one more thing, Ashok, as you were saying, something clicked my mind where I think full stack is like, I look at full stack from knowledge perspective, not from specialization perspective always. So like even when I interview, let's say a front-end developer, they should know how the session are managed on the back end. They shouldn't say, I don't know. So I think it's more on the knowledge side where full stack play is critical, that they should know how the back end work or front end work. They could be specialized in a given technology on a given art, but the knowledge is very important on the full stack.
actually, you triggered a different one. In cyber attacks, the attacker is very full stack, by the way. So we often go in the links of the chain. They are very specialized, but between the links, and cyber attacker will not have the pride to go against you head on. They know that these links will drop. Exactly what you said, Ashit. Good point. Back to you, Anuj.
Thank you so much, Ashok. These are awesome insights, so thank you so much for that. What I'm definitely hearing from all of this is, you really need people who are passionate about what they're really doing, and then willing to learn, right? Because at the end of the day, it's such a evolving situation, right? Every organization, every problem is different, and willing to learn and willing to go that extra step, I think, makes a difference between, the good and the best in that sense. That leads us to the next point. How can somebody begin their journey into a full stack career, right? Somebody who's interested and wants to basically grow. How should they go about it? Ashok, do you want to start with this?
I think a boot camp certification, just interest first. The second thing would be a rotation to a different team. Most of us think of growing vertically. You're better off spiraling, because as you go higher, you will be very strong in one area, but but absolutely no idea in the other areas. And guess what? Which areas you will fall apart in? The areas you never learned. So just spiraling and picking up, like Ashit was saying, front end. Okay, I want to try some back end, and maybe 20% time. And that's not even for the company, it's for myself, for my own career. And once I have both, I see things very differently. I see the full picture, full pie. Um, Typically, they see the full pie much more all the way to the business and the product. And I think a rotation is a good idea. 3-month rotations where you get the hang of things.
Thanks for that, Ashok. Would you, don't want to put you on a spot here, but would you recommend any books, certification, or any of the bootcamps that you may or may not be aware of that might be helpful in this end of?
Not off the cuff.
Okay.
Give me a couple minutes, maybe I will.
No, perfect. Thank you so much, Ashok. Sayed, your thoughts, and if you have any recommendations on that direction as well.
Yeah, I think I was trying to unmute myself, but so I 100% agree with Ashok. I mean, boot camps are a really good way to really at least gain interest in full stack development. Also trying to test yourself out if you're actually capable of doing that. Plus, I think it's very important to invest in yourself. Self-investment is the key here. The mindset plays a big role to become a successful full stack engineer. No full stack engineer is evenly distributed. You always have your strong side, either front end or back end, and then you transition to the other side. And that's how you can play that best role when it comes to estimating a critical project or timelines as well, because you can really give your input based on your experience versus collecting data from 3 different people. The other thing is, again, as a manager, how do you really identify those key engineers who actually are interested in full stack engineering, and also sort of challenge them by doing these rotations? Because a lot of times engineers are very willing to rotate, but management is not. So how do you really enable them to do this journey in a way that they experience different components within the application, different jobs and roles, and that really helps. And then also, just like security engineer that Ashok mentioned, you can also become a very good production support engineer, because once you have like these P1 issues, it's a nightmare when you collect 7 different engineers try to figure out what's happening there, versus one guy who can understand the whole picture end to end.
That's really, really good point, Sayed. And I definitely support that. I think it's a two-way street, learning and giving, and I think management plays a key role in sort of inculcating that culture and sort of giving those opportunities as well. So thanks so much for bringing that up. Ashad, any of your thoughts?
I think nothing additional to add other than what I think Ashok and Syed mentioned. It's all about how much drive the individual has, because the engineers who get frustrated the most because they want to solve a problem, but they are not enabled to because of the boundaries created by the system. Those are the engineers who become like some full stack developers. And for me, I think I wouldn't limit my full stack to like front end, back end, because in my experience, I've seen engineers like where at one point some of the cookies were getting dropped from our like payload request, and the engineer went all the way up to load balancer and went ahead and told DevOps, fix this setting on load balancer because you're trimming my payload request. That's the full stack developer. Like he no one had to tell him go talk to DevOps, but they did it because that's the drive they had. And the environment we created as a company at Chegg was that we were giving them, enabling them to go not create any boundaries. So we didn't have any rotation policy, but we just identified those individuals and we created this role of site reliability engineers who were really strong, like at like problem solving. And anytime there's a critical production issue that came up, we just assign it to them, and these are the individuals who will go any level, any stack, and bring out the best results. So I think creating the separate, like a special like title or a role, give them the freedom and the confidence that they are enabled and empowered to go solve the problem without any kind of barriers.
That's amazing. And I know there was another question that had come up from somebody about boot camps, especially folks that are trying to actually get into full stack, whether they're back end or front end or whatever it is. At the end of the day, a lot of the rumor mill or market expectation is, hey, get a boot camp and get a full stack job, right? What would your advice be, for folks that are sort of, yes, boot camp, you've got the understanding of what the expectation is out there from the organization standpoint, but what should be their expectation? How should they sort of go about that?
By the way, I know you'd asked some names. So usually I go to Udemy, Udacity, Coursera. They're not very expensive, maybe $100. It's a beautiful investment in ourselves. LinkedIn Learning, all of these great investments in ourselves. And for small dollar amounts, you get quite far.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I completely agree with that. Thank you so much for sharing that, Ashok. And, what would be your advice to, folks out there that are investing, taking that time with some of these platforms? How should they, what do they need to do next, right? Do they, wherever they're working, should they go and talk to their managers and say, hey, you know what, we need some more opportunities to learn and grow. We need to execute on whatever we just learned, right? Because I think there's a set expectation. Hey, I've got Udemy, now I'm a full stack engineer. Right? Unfortunately, I think you need to back that experience, and it's a catch-22 in that sense. So would love to get your thoughts on that as well.
So for me, I think the big piece is if you've taken it, it's most managers will be happy if you will actually do something beyond what you're supposed to do. So that's where this will be. So most people, if you're expanding your wings beyond front end, moving to the back end or the other way, they will be actually quite happy. Yes.
Yep. Thank you, guys. All right. Next one that I have is a pretty interesting point. I think would love to get your insights on this. How do people transition from an individual contributor to a manager, right? What is it that you guys have actually went through in your careers? How did you guys actually plan and execute on some of these steps? Ashad, do you want to start off with this?
Yes, and I'll give you a very real story, and I wouldn't like. So I was forced into that role, like as a part of the necessity, early days of my career, and I'll be very honest. Like I was not the best manager because it's like a lot of cultural like learnings for me because I was a student, started my first job as an engineer. Within 1 year, I was asked to manage a team of 4 with zero experience, zero knowledge, understand how the culture works, how the management works. Guess what? I was not the best manager in the beginning, but I think over a period of time, what you need to do is sit on the sidelines and learn from the experts. You need to learn what it means to be a manager. I think there are certain expectations that you should have about managing. It's not about what can you do, but it's about what your team can do, right? And I think there are some foundational things that you learn being in the role. So I never really prepared. I think I learned on the job almost everything, and which is what resulted into initial failure. But my manager trusted me and said, look, we'll prepare you to be successful in a role, and give me the opportunity again. But during that transition period, I was observing some professionals. I was constantly getting feedback from my manager, and it helped me in being able to manage a team and eventually scale it to a much larger organization. So I think to prepare, you need to like put the company and the team first ahead of you, because if you're a first-time manager, it's always like, oh, I can do this job faster than others, and you always want to like prove yourself. But you got to put yourself away and disconnect yourself from the role, and empower, enable your team to deliver the job.
Thank you so much, Ashad. I think Ashok had something urgent come up, so he had to drop off the stream. Syed, your thoughts on this as well?
Yeah, I agree with Ashad. I mean, I think the number one, I think, step is to be the enabler. Take a step back and let the team shine. and be that person who can be the reliable person to go to every single time any team member is struggling. The worst single reason for any engineer I see to be a manager is to ask for a promotion. Because whenever somebody goes for that and actually ends up getting a promotion, they end up regretting it because they're not ready for that. It's the mindset, right? So you have to be ready. It's a journey. It's not a short inning. You have to play the game for the long one. So you actually enable a ton of other engineers along the way, and that's how you build a rockstar team. And then also never stop learning, right? As a manager, you have to learn so many things on the fly, and there will be so many first scenarios. Always seek help from your seniors and mentors to really keep that learning journey alive. But again, just for a promotion would be the worst single thing that can happen to anybody's career, to be a manager. You have to be humble once you get that post, and you need to understand exactly how you want to deal with the team in a very humble way, so they trust you.
That's a really, really important point. Thank you so much for sharing, Sayed. And that sort of, you touched upon a very important topic. It's, the new generation that's sort of coming into engineering to a certain extent, that's entering the workforce. What is the state of engineering from that standpoint, right? I mean, there's a different mindset to how each generation thinks about, there's a lot of highlight. Then you throw in the pandemic, which actually accelerated a lot of digital transformation. There's hybrid work, remote work. What would be your advice on the new folks that are entering the workforce from an engineering graduation? What would be your thoughts on that, Sayed?
I mean, market is great. I mean, it's we have so many open positions, and it's hard to fill with the right candidate, right? So I think there's no shortage of work, and I think it's going to keep growing as we have more and more advancements happening, right? It's just that a fresh engineer, fresh out of college kid need to focus on their foundations and fundamentals. I mean, you can pick up a programming language any stage of your career and transition from front end to back end, but just find your passion, invest in it, and then definitely you should be able to land a job with some mentorship, some of these tricks. Of course, taking courses, keeping up with the technology and all that comes along with that. But even if your foundations are not strong, even taking boot camps is not going to help you and get you that far. So you have to understand, like an engineer, how to solve a problem. So problem solving, passion, and of course the hunger to learn at every stage will help. But there's tons of opportunities. I mean, we're struggling to hire people, and that's just the reality here.
Yep. Ashit?
I think that the trend that I'm seeing in the whole the current the technical skill space is there is quantity, but there is not enough quality. And I'm talking from my own personal experience trying to hire a team in India. Like my product is India focused, and I'm seeing like some of the engineers are like the market is so crazy there now because so much investor money is being pumped in. Some of the engineers are getting like offers which includes like a Harley Davidson bikes and stuff, and it's just ridiculous where a fresher who's like a year or two out of college is expecting salaries which a 5-year or 10-year person would be making, right? So it has resulted into skewing the market quite a bit. But again, at the end of the day, you're not getting the same quality. Imagine you're trying to interview a candidate and they don't even show up, or they don't even like want to take a code challenge. So I think it's kind of resulted in entitlement because of all this investor VC money pumped into the space, that there's so much demand for these talent, and then they feel entitled. That it definitely is not the best, I think, state for startups like ours, who's trying to build a company. We are a fintech product, so we need quality. We can't just like have a like fresher like go and build whatever, because we're dealing with people's money. Now, what can be done in the current COVID space is, I think what Syed said, like the individuals, the engineers should have the hunger and the drive to be successful. What COVID did was it took away the opportunity. The juniors had to learn from the seniors sitting in the same office, sitting in the same conference room, having whiteboarding sessions, just overhearing what the peers are talking about. I think that's what it has the COVID has done the damage to the learning process. And I wish like there was an alternative way where the technology teams and the leadership can continue to kind of share the knowledge within the team, especially within the junior members, so we can continue to build and get quality talent within the space in the industry. Otherwise, I would think the long term, it's going to have a very negative impact on the level of talent that we find when we try to find someone with specializations.
That's a really good point. Thank you so much for sharing that, Arshad. Yeah, it's been pretty interesting and challenging with work from homes. That mentorship piece is such a key thing, all across the organization, right? I mean, everybody needs mentors, everybody needs guidance, and that's how we all learn pretty much every single day. And that sort of brings me to the next question. I mean, what's the state of leadership then, right? At the end of the day, obviously with all of the adaptation, how have all of the leaders' roles have changed, right? Whether it's a pandemic or not, the hiring has been super challenging, delivering on business continuity and projects, and in general with how engineering has changed, how it's evolved. What are your thoughts on leadership in that sense?
I think the leadership. The leadership needs to continue to evolve as the market conditions evolve. With pandemic, I think the leadership initially was like a lot of in-person meetings, conversations, sitting in the conference rooms and talking to your teams and getting updates. Like even having whiteboarding sessions. That's what I used to do as a CTO at Ultrist. When we went remote, like I was missing half of the meetings because not every meeting could be done the same way that I could. Right? The people would walk up to me and say, "Hey, do you have 5 minutes? Want to brainstorm something with you?" That doesn't happen. So I think it's more like what it requires now is the leadership has to engage more often and not expect people to like walk up to you and ask you for feedback or help. And I think it's both way, like where individuals, the team should engage with the leadership should engage the other way around. And on the hiring and the recruiting front, I think it's a space that leadership will have to put even more effort being remote because you just do not have access to the individuals like you did before in the past. So I think our day job will change, and it has changed quite a bit. And we have to figure out how we distribute our time between meetings as well as finding time to talk to individuals. Think about how often did we have like a quick 5-minute conversation with your team member after a meeting or before the meeting. We don't have that anymore. Like when this meeting ends in like 13 minutes, it will end. There's no more like Anuj and Ashit having a chat and saying, "Hey, here's the problem, I want to talk," right? So we're missing those, and I think we need to create those opportunities for us to continue to like engage with our teams.
Solid point, Ashit. Thank you. Syed, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I mean, as a leader, what we need to focus on is creating a culture where there's a high level of engagement and at every level. And you're the enabler there. Especially in my shop, my organization is 100% remote. What I try to make sure is we have overlap with all the engineers based on time zones and areas they're working from. Again, how do you really enable them by peer reviews for codes, commits, collaborate on any stories? How do we really pair them? And again, rotating engineers also plays a big role there. So you really encourage the engagement among the team members. And again, being humble is the key, where people feel comfortable reaching out to you for any feedback that you can turn into an actionable item, right? I think it's all about evolving now. As we said, gone are the days with whiteboards and those coffee stand discussions, because we just don't have that luxury anymore. We just need to find these opportunities where we can create more overlaps and more engagement.
Thank you so much.
It does work. It does work, actually.
Are you guys making, just a personal question here, are you guys making effort to keep collaborating or collaboration time as well? I mean, I normally see calendars are like chock-a-block, everybody's swamped, they're sort of running from one meeting to the other. There's just no time for strategy or vision in that sense, because you're just trying to get some job done. So it's been pretty fascinating in that sense. All right, moving on to the next one. So, the most important crux of this session today, what is the future of engineering? Where do you see this in the next 10 years? And what would you recommend engineers to focus on today so that they can continue to be relevant downstream or in a few years' time? Ashit, do you want to take this one?
I think I would just say, like, I think what Steve Jobs said, be hungry or something, right? Like in one of his speech, I think if you want to be relevant, to answer the first question, if you want to be relevant, you got to be hungry. You got to be hungry to learn and constantly keep evolving with the evolving technology and trend. Like, you should be on the blogs. Like, I used to, when I was a developer, even when I was a manager and hands-on, I used to read D-Zone like all the time, like, because there's always something new coming up, right? I used to be on like public forums, like I used to be on Quora, I used to be on Reddit, whatever, because there's so much conversation happening, Stack Overflow. So engineering, like whoever continues to engage with the community, understands what's happening in different space, follow some of the technology companies which are considered industry leaders in implementing technology. Like back in the day, it was Netflix and Facebook and Twitter and all those companies were, and LinkedIn. They were all like constantly evolving. So very important for engineers to continue to engage and evolve, to be relevant in the future. In terms of the trend that I see, I think full stack is going to continue to evolve and grow. The demand for full stack developer is going to continue to grow. And just a comparison, like I can give you, 20 years ago, when you were like when you walk into an office, there has to be an office person who just opened the door and like seat you down, right? Now that has changed. The same person brings you water and then gets you into the conference room, gets your appointment. Like they do 5 more things, right? Now think about the engineering where there was a back end only and there was a front end only. That has started evolving. Now we are seeing full stack developers, and it's going to continue going further upstream, which is going to be on the top level, like on the DevOps side, and maybe even like full stack developers who have SEO expertise, right? So I think, as I say, be curious. Like if you enjoy certain things, just don't focus on that one thing. Go and acquire skills that are adjacent to it, because no one can beat that skill. I think in the knowledge, the business knowledge and the domain knowledge is going to be way more valuable than just the technology knowledge. JavaScript is going to keep changing. There'll be 5 more libraries coming out in the next 10 years. Java is there, but there's Golang, and there are other languages coming up which are like derivatives of it, right? So don't just focus on like, I want to learn this technology and be the best at it, because that trend keeps changing. Ruby changed to PHP, changed to Java, back to something else, right? It's always shifting. So don't focus on the technology as much, but focus more on the domain, and continue to acquire experience on the adjacent sides of the skills that you are familiar with. And I think that will make you much more relevant for a lot longer.
Thanks so much, Ashit. Syed?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the engineers who are willing to evolve will be the most successful engineers in the future. You have to really keep up with the trends. Full stack engineering, I think it's gonna be more relevant to companies which are 100% remote, because you want engineers who are a package who can really think and sort through any problem up to implementation on their own. Plus, again, with pandemic, with so much still unknown in terms of how the future will look like, hybrid collaboration or remote or in person. So we should be just ready for all the flexibility and changes. So keep evolving, and again, invest in yourself. I think that pays off.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for your thoughts. I know we're sort of coming to time, so we'll jump into the Q&A session. The first question is from Gabrielle. From your standpoint, in the future, do you see the back end and the front end, just die off? Will it all be full stack? Actually, do you want to take this one?
I can take that.
Yes, go for it.
Go ahead.
All right, sure. So thank you. I think there is a place for specialized engineers, and it will always be there. I think when it comes to high scale and very specialized skill sets, I mean, it's always there. Where it comes to robust architecture and wide scale application implementation, they will be there. It's just that to prove the hypothesis, to move faster, you would need these full stack engineers who can really get the results faster. But then you have to get that project into scaling stage where you need to really consult some specialized engineers to really get the job done.
Cool. Thank you so much for that. Let's take the next one. From Rahul Sharma, often I hear from engineers that interviews for jobs are more difficult than actual jobs. Is that true? What is your advice to hiring managers to make the hiring process a little simpler? Anybody wants to take this one?
I'll take it. I agree. Like I think I've heard a lot that I went to interview XYZ company and they made me write a quick sort. And I'm like, when was the last time I used a quick sort in my career after I graduated? Never. So rather than making the engineers reinvent the wheel and have them do something that already exists and something that has been done in a very optimized way, or rather give them a real world problem and show them how and try to understand how they solve it. At the end of the day, engineers are problem solvers. So try to find problem solvers versus trying to find someone who knows how certain thing was done in a certain way as per the textbooks. And that's what my approach is, and I've always been doing that. I never ask an engineer to write a quick sort or like any of the standard algorithms that you learned in the school, like binary sort and stuff. Theories are theories, but 90% or plus of the companies in the industry are not into like the Google type of search engine where in milliseconds you get hundreds of thousands of records search, or nor are we launching like SpaceX type of rockets every day that you need to have that kind of depth of knowledge. So I would say the companies, when they're hiring managers, focus more on the problem and the ability of an engineer to solve the problem and less about the textbook style like interview process. If they want to like filter through a lot of resumes, there are other ways in which they could, but I would personally would not use any of those.
Thank you so much, Arshad. All right, the next one's from Neha. Very insightful session, first off. Question is, in your opinion, what are the latest trends in full stack web development? Syed, you want to take it?
Yeah, I think it's the understanding of the framework. So there's a lot of frameworks that are out there that enables engineers to do end-to-end development. And that could be really useful. Plus, again, most of the trend I see is front-end engineers wanting to get into the back-end side of things versus the other way around. Again, I think back-end engineers are still in demand for more specialized sort of skills. But for front-end engineers to really transition to a full-stack engineer, they really need to focus on their foundations and basics. And that, I mean, besides that, I think once they grasp the object-oriented type of programming concepts, I think everything gets a lot easier.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Syed. All right. I think we are pretty much done. The final question from me, would be, with the hybrid model that we're expecting to come up, I think next year offices will start to open up. There are a lot of colleagues and teams that are remotely working. How do you see that trend sort of shifting as well from an organization perspective? Do you see folks coming back into the office, maybe a hybrid kind of thing, couple of days work from home, couple of days work in the office? How do you guys envision that happening? So do you want to start off first?
Yeah, we are 100% remote organization, so we solved that problem. So there's no more question about it. But again, as I mentioned, creating that overlap is important. I don't want people to do 9 to 5 jobs, but have some hours of overlap regardless of where they are. So really enable them to collaborate. Otherwise, I think productivity-wise, I don't see any loss there. We're still, firing at all cylinders and really producing a lot of work.
Awesome. Thank you, Syed. Arshad?
Two thoughts. One is I go back to the experience level and the state of the company. If you're a very young company, early stage, getting faster alignment is important. So when you start someone completely remote, sometimes a lot of the information could be lost in translation online. So having maybe a couple of days in person definitely helps in ensuring that the individuals who just started the job understands what we are building, why we are building, and can learn quickly from the peers sitting around them. And the second is if you're hiring juniors, then the mentorship conversation we had, I think that's very important. So I would at least want them to be in person few days a week, if not all 5 days. For seniors, I think seniors who have been with the company, full flexibility, as Syed said, completely remote, fully remote, I'm very open to that. In fact, all of my engineering team is fully remote. We don't even have them in the office. We have an office in Delhi, in Gurgaon, and but junior people, when we hire them, we have them come in person and spend time with the team. It just improves the efficiency and onboarding.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. This has been a fantastic session. Really a lot to chew on. I want to thank all of our panel, Ashok, Syed, and Ashid, for taking out your time to join us today and share some insightful information. I'm sure I speak on behalf of everyone. I could hear you guys talk all day. For all of our listeners, if you don't get to your questions live, ask us on Twitter at BayOne Solutions and tag Future of Work. If you missed part of or want to re-listen to this great conversation, these will be available on YouTube shortly. If you'd like to learn more about our webinars or listen to some of our old ones, make sure to visit our LinkedIn and YouTube pages. It has some fantastic content. If you'd like to know more about BayOne, please visit our website, bayone.com. Thank you again, and hope to see you on our next live stream. Enjoy the rest of the day, and hope to talk to you guys soon. Thank you.